If you're like me, you might be asking yourself, what do I do? How do I show up? We've been trained to perform resilience while our nervous systems are screaming. And it is in moments like this that training becomes dangerous because when everything is urgent, when every injustice demands our immediate response, when our timelines are flooded with calls to action, we can lose ourselves. Survival doesn't mean suffering. It means sustaining yourself so you can continue to show up in whatever role you're playing today.
Sabrosura pa' ti que.
Hola, hola, welcome back to Café con Pam, the bilingual podcast that celebrates the power of our stories, the medicine in our voices, and the magic of reclaiming who we are. Yo soy Pam Covarrubias, and today we're going to do something a little different. This is a solo episode, just me and you, about what to do when you don't know what to do. I'm recording this on a day when the world feels heavy, when our hearts feel heavy, everything's heavy, especially if you're in the US. I've done my good amounts of grieving and crying and letting my emotions move through before I got to record this. And because I'm listening to all of the conversations happening, and because I know if you're like me, you might be asking yourself, what do I do? How do I show up? How do I not fall apart while the world is falling apart? And what I know is this: we are first, second, third gens. We are kids of immigrants, women of color, people of color. And a lot of us are navigating multiple worlds. Society has trained us to hold it all. We have learned to be the bridge, to carry the pain of the world, the pain of our people, the pain of what we witness while pretending we're fine. We've been trained to perform resilience while our nervous systems are screaming. And it is in moments like this that training becomes dangerous because when everything is urgent, when every injustice demands our immediate response, when our timelines are flooded with calls to action, we can lose ourselves when we have other people policing us, which I have thoughts on that. That's a whole other episode. All of that can lead us to burn out so thoroughly that we lose ourselves. And losing ourselves means we are succumbing to what the system wants us to do, which is to be on the ground, to be distraught, to be at that place of loss. So, today I want to offer you something different. This is not going to be a to do list. This is not going to be 5 ways to be a better whatever, but more so a framework for understanding that there are many ways to contribute and that this might give myself some pushback, but intentional rest, strategic rest does not mean that we are abandoning the fight. It means we are refueling ourselves to survive it. And I want to ground us all to preface this with me leaning on the shoulders of the feminist giants who came before us: Audre Lorde, Gloria Anzaldúa, and bell hooks. These are women that understood that resistance isn't just about the work we do in the streets, but the work we do to keep ourselves whole. And I'm bringing in also Deepa Iyer's social change ecosystem map, which is something that I always refer back to ever since 2020 when I discovered that. When I discovered it, it's a framework that shows us there are 10 different roles we can play in social change. And you don't have to play all of them to matter. So, if you're exhausted, if you're overwhelmed, if you're feeling survivor's guilt because you're not doing, quote, enough, este episodio es para ti. So let's talk about what it means to stand on both shores at once. Como Gloria Anzaldúa nos enseñó, to be in the borderlands and not to be destroyed by it. Let me start with Audre Lorde, with words that she wrote while she was dying of cancer. Quote, caring for myself is not self indulgence, it's self preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. End quote. Self preservation is an act of political warfare. Lorde wrote this as she was battling cancer, and she explicitly compared the battle to her experience battling anti Black racism. She understood that when the world is attacking your body, when systems are designed to wear you down, to care for yourself is to refuse to let them win. But here's what gets lost when this quote goes viral on Instagram next to pictures of bubble baths. Audre Lorde was not talking about individual self care as an escape. She was talking about community care. She was talking about making sure we're not measuring our worth by our wearingness. And for people like us, for first gens, for eldest daughters, for women of color, we have had to work out how to survive in a system. And sometimes to survive in a system is to survive the system itself. This is not about the face masks and the spa days and the hot tubs. This is about honoring your nervous system when it tells you it needs to pause. This is about recognizing that you cannot pour from an empty cup is not toxic positivity. It's biology. Contemporary Chicana feminist Gloria Anzaldúa, she built a more nuanced framework based on what we live. Pero in the 1990s, Ana Castillo introduced Chicanisma, spelled with an X, to honor the Nahuatl language, as a retrofitted form of Chicana feminism intended to create an avenue for mestizas and the tribalized indigenous women to not only claim our indigenismo, but also to reinsert the forsaken feminine into our consciousness. ¿Qué significa esto? Bueno, Ana Castillo was pushing back against the idea that we have to choose between indigenous identity and feminist consciousness. For Ana Castillo, Chicanismo with the X is, quote, an ever present consciousness of interdependency specifically rooted in our culture and our history. But here's where contemporary scholars are taking this further. Maylay Blackwell, Luis Urrieta, and Floridalma Bosch Lopez developed critical Latinx indigeneities as a framework that, quote, critique enduring colonial logics and practices that operate from different localities of power as well as the physical, social, cultural, economic, and psychological violence that often targets indigenous and Latinx peoples, end quote. Why does this matter? Because these scholars show us that mestizaje functions not so much as a celebration of racial mixture, pero más as it's been heralded in a Chicana or Chicano-Chicane national imaginary, more as a program of racial whitening. In other words, the language we use matters. En pocas palabras, the frameworks we inherit can either liberate us or continue the colonial patterns. And this is why I like to go sometimes to academia and to these incredible scholars who do all of the studying. What these contemporary scholars are teaching us is that we don't need to erase who we are to claim feminism or to claim where we're going next. Y también, we don't need to romanticize the mixture to honor complexity. So, what this means for us, women who are navigating multiple worlds, what we want to take from this is that what we are living is what Gloria Anzaldúa calls Nepantla, the in between space. You're at the crossroads. We're in that, in spirituality, they call it the liminal, the liminal. And you don't have to choose. You don't have to be only out in the streets protesting or only making teas and using your herbalist gifts. You don't have to be only angry or only grateful. You don't have to be only working or only resting. The X in Chicanisma is, quote, a reference to indigenous survival after hundreds of years of colonization. It acknowledges the moment where the creative power of women became deliberately appropriated by the male society, end quote. Entonces, what's happening is that we are standing at the crossroad, holding multiple truths all at once. Y eso a veces nos confunde, ¿no? Sometimes we're like, wait a minute. We get into survival. We make it happen. That's wisdom that we've carried for so long. And the truth is that we can be heartbroken about the state of the world, and you can also protect your peace. You can be committed to justice, and you can need a step back sometimes and take a nap. You can care deeply about your community and prioritize your own healing. These may feel like contradictions for your body, but they're not. This is what it actually means to live in Nepantla, como diría Gloria Anzaldúa. And this is how we make it work. We all know this. Talking about money is not always the most comfortable. Pero our friends from Savvy Ladies make it easier, and now in Español. You don't have to feel the pressure to translate for your mamá or your tías because Savvy Ladies has their whole site en nuestro idioma. Y ahora they can easily access their free resources like talleres, clases, y mi favorita es la línea gratis para enviar preguntas. Their free financial helpline en donde puedes conectar with a trusted financial expert. Whether you need financial guidance in English or in Español, Savvy Ladies is here to support you. Visit savvyladies.org, that is SAVVYLADIES.org, para empezar your financial freedom. You know what's frustrating? Losing your wallet. And you know sometimes what's even more painful? Realizing your almost full punch card from your favorite cafecito spot is now gone. But at least, even when your cafecito points have vanished, at BMO, if you lose your debit card, they'll print you a new one instantly at a local branch. Plus, you can use your phone to freeze your debit card to prevent any unauthorized transactions. Learn more at bmo.com. Conditions apply. Accounts provided in the United States by BMO Bank and a member FDIC. So, let's talk now about the social change ecosystem, which is something that changed how I think about my role in all of this. Deepa Iyer created the social change ecosystem map in 2017. It's evolved, just like everything evolves and grows. And I love using these types of frameworks, being kind of like a translator for this. I have my own frameworks, but I also use other people's work that also grows and evolves. And it's changed. And I think it's really powerful because what it does is it identifies 10 roles that are critical in social change work: the weavers, the experimenters, the frontline responders, the visionaries, the builders, the caregivers, the disruptors, the healers, the storytellers, and the guides. Somehow I missed my fingers. But here's the revolutionary part about this: that you don't have to play all of those 10 roles. In fact, we shouldn't. This is the one time when I will say you shouldn't do this. Because we are more effective and more sustainable when we focus on 1 to 3 roles that match our strengths and our current capacity. So let's go through the roles and what they are. And my invitation, this is, I'm giving you the cliff notes to this. Of course, I'll have the link in the show notes so you can explore further and, figure it out yourself. Because my invitation with breaking down the roles is notice which ones resonate with you right now in this moment. The weavers, they see the through lines of connectivity between people, places, organizations, ideas, and movements. These are the people connecting the dots, building coalitions, introducing people who need to know each other. Experimenters, they innovate, they pioneer, and invent. They take risks and course correct as needed. These are the ones trying new approaches and testing what works. Frontline responders. They address community crisis by marshaling and organizing resources, networks, and messages. These are the people who show up immediately when a crisis hits. Visionaries. They imagine and generate our boldest possibilities. our hopes, our dreams, and they remind us of our direction. These are the dreamers who keep us focused on what we're building toward. The builders, they develop, organize, and implement ideas, practices, people, and resources in service of a collective vision. These are the project managers, the ones who make the vision real. The caregivers, they nurture and nourish the people around them by creating and sustaining a community of care, joy, and connection. These are the ones feeding people, checking in, creating spaces for rest, etc. Disruptors, they take uncomfortable and risky actions to shake up the status quo, to raise awareness, and to build power. These are the protesters, the ones willing to make the noise. Healers, they offer mental, emotional, and physical support to individuals and communities affected by trauma and injustices. These are the therapists, the somatic practitioners, the ones holding space for grief. Storytellers, they use various mediums to bring attention to social issues. They share experiences and create narratives that inspire action. These are the writers, the artists, the podcasters sharing the stories that need to be told. Guides, they teach, they counsel, they advise, using gifts of well earned discernment and wisdom. These are the teachers, the mentors, the coaches who help others navigate the path. Different roles. Now, the invite here is for you to understand that our roles might change depending on the situation. And again, we're not playing all of them. We're not even playing most of them. Maximum 3. My question to you is which one of the roles as I went through them feels the most natural to you in this moment? This is not the question of which one do you think you should be doing, or which one looks more impressive, or which one actually like will make the loudest noise if your nervous system can't handle that. The question is which one actually matches your current capacity and your gifts in this moment. Maybe you're a natural caregiver who's been trying to force yourself to be a disruptor and it's exhausting you. Maybe you're a storyteller who's been shaming yourself for not being on the front lines. Maybe you're a healer who needs to heal and you've forgotten that rest is actually part of that role. This ecosystem needs all of us, but it doesn't need you to be everything. And if you're feeling guilty right now, which is something for the last, I feel like this whole year, it's been part of the conversations between me and my clients. Guilt is real. Survivor's guilt is real because you may be thinking, people are suffering more than me. Who am I to rest? But what I say is, your suffering is not a prerequisite for your care. The privilege that you may carry, if you have it, is not a reason to destroy yourself. Because when you suffer, you're not fixing other suffering. Our bodies may gravitate towards, let me empathize with you by putting myself through the same pain that you're going through. And the reality is that that keeps us in the same space of inaction. Sometimes we need rest. That's action in a way. That is sustainable action. What we want to really understand is that our survival is radical action. And survival doesn't mean suffering. It means sustaining yourself so you can continue to show up in whatever role you're playing today. This guilt comes from calladita culture whispering that good daughters don't rest while others suffer. We take one for the team. And that is the same toxic narrative that tells you that your worth is measured by your exhaustion. Pero la verdad es that when people focus on their unique roles and capacities, they actually have a far easier time showing up for change without succumbing to burnout. You resting so you can show up tomorrow is not abandoning everyone. It's not leaving people behind. We can say that you resting so you can show up tomorrow stronger, better, refueled resource is the strategy. So, What do you do when you don't know what to do? Numero uno, I'm going to give you a couple. I know I said I wasn't going to give you a list, but I will. So, the first step is always to bring awareness into the truth. Acknowledge what is true because the truth cannot be questioned. It's the truth. So, first, we want to name it. We want to say it out loud. This is overwhelming. I don't know what to do. I am scared, angry, exhausted, tired, frustrated. We don't want to spiritually bypass the truth. We don't want to bypass what we feel and jump into gratitude, thinking that the gratitude is going to erase the reality. It won't. We don't want to perform resilience either. And so the first step is to say, all right, this is the truth. This is what I'm feeling in this moment. And that's what it is. We want to be honest about the reality of it. Paso número dos, we want to check in with our nervous system. This is where we can simply tune in for 30 seconds and we can take a breath because our breath is always with us. My recommendation is to do this when you tap on the side of the hand. As an EFT practitioner, I always bring tapping into your nervous system regulation or even your nervous system check-in. And side of the hand helps us figure out discernment. So you can simply lower your gaze, close your eyes, start tapping on the side of the hand and ask yourself, what does my body actually need right now? What does my body actually need right now? You can ask yourself and see what your body responds. This is not what you should be doing. What do you need? And perhaps my body, as I was doing this, said, take a sip of water. Maybe you need to scream into a pillow. Maybe it's to get out and organize a mutual aid drive. Don't know. Whatever the answer is, that is your truth. And the invitation is for you to honor what is true for you. Paso número tres, you want to identify your role in the movement. So you want to go back to the social change ecosystem and ask yourself, what is 1 to 3 roles that match my current capacity right now? Right now, today. Maybe this week you're a caregiver. Maybe you're making food for your community. Maybe you're checking in on your neighbors. Maybe this month you're a healer. Maybe you're holding space for others' grief. Maybe you're facilitating typing circles. Maybe you're teaching other people how to call their representatives. Maybe this season you're a storyteller. Maybe you're documenting what's happening. Maybe you're sharing your unique perspective. Maybe you are keeping the narrative alive. And maybe right now, it might be your season of rest. Because as you resource yourself and you get back to that level of strength, you can move back into that role of frontline responder if that is your role. The invitation is for you to trust whatever is true for you. Because what we want to remember is that the ecosystem needs all of the roles. Just like Mother Nature. I always ground myself in the teachings of Mother Earth. And so when we look at an actual ecosystem and we see how the birds will eat some seeds and they will travel and migrate to, this is very fitting, migrate to other places, and then they will release those seeds and then new trees show up. Every role is needed. And when you understand your role, you stop performing and we stop feeling guilty. Paso número 4, take a tiny action. Tiny. I love micro wins. You don't have to do everything. You can do one micro win. One phone call, one donation, one conversation, one nap, one prayer. One thing that feels aligned with your role and with your capacity in this moment. And then, this is important, you want to acknowledge that you did it. You don't want to brush right through it. You don't want to diminish it. You don't want to compare either. The micro win is you showing up and saying, I showed up in the way that I could right now in this moment. And that is important. Paso número 5, we want to practice our conciencia. And we're basing this on Gloria Anzaldúa's teaching to stand on both shores at once, to hold the contradictions, to develop the tolerance for ambiguity. And I think we've been trained our whole lives to develop this tolerance for ambiguity because we've been navigating multiple worlds so much. But I think this time calls for us to truly acknowledge that we can be committed and we can also need boundaries. We can care deeply and we can protect our peace. We can be part of the solution and still be healing. Holding the contradiction is wisdom. So, I would like to close with a brief grounding practice. The invitation is for you to put your feet flat on the floor. You want to feel your connection to the ground, to the place you call home, to whatever space you're in. And you want to tap on the side of the hand if you want to, or you can hold your your heart, and that way you are pushing on the collarbone point. And simply repeat after me. You can also just hold it. You can do both, actually. Yeah. You can just kind of like hold your hand and then put your hand on your chest and just give yourself the space to exist in your body. And repeat after me. I am here. I am doing what I can. My capacity does not equal the measure of my commitment. I am standing on both shores at once. I am holding contradictions. I'm surviving in a system designed to exhaust me. And my survival, my wholeness is necessary. I am here. I'm still here. I'm still here. You want to breathe that in and remind yourself you're enough. And if we got some whispers come in as you were doing that exercise, you can do some tapping around it where the formula literally is step number 1, acknowledge the truth. So if those whispers came in and said, "Ooh, but you need to be doing more," or "You're not doing enough," or whatever, you want to just tap through that truth and give yourself permission for that whisper to move through your body, whatever that whisper may be. Because we truly cannot do everything. And when we don't know what to do next, acknowledging the truth of, I don't know what to do next, is the first step. So, my reminder to you is that we all have a role. And in order for us to show up in our roles, we are to be whole and complete and resourced. And we don't want to show up in our roles burnt out because then that won't help anyone. And also to requote Deepa Iyer's social change ecosystem framework, to take a look at it because it truly is a great tool to help us realign ourselves when we feel lost, when we feel confused and uncertain. And in order for us to bring our full selves, we want to think about the ecosystem truly as the only way for us to thrive is for all of us to thrive, is to acknowledge this is the role that I'm playing today. So find a role, honor your capacity, stand on both shores, navigate Napantla with intention, and remember, rest. Because for those of us who were never meant to survive, rest is our revolution. Y bueno, como siempre, thank you so, so much for being here. Thank you for choosing to stay whole, for refusing to measure your worth by your exhaustion, for believing that your survival is important, for being here. I don't take for granted. Thank you, thank you, thank you so, so much. I will see you next week. Como siempre, sigue brillando. Café con Pam is created con mucho amor by our small but mighty team. Content production by Nancy Jaimes. Podcast management by Maru Linardi. Social media and marketing by Brenda Figueroa. And me, your host, Pam Covarrubias. To keep the cafecito brewing and the healing flowing, join the Supporters Club for only $5 a month and access early episodes, behind the scenes vibes, and exclusive minisodes you won't hear anywhere else. Screenshot this episode and tag me and share what resonated. I love seeing your takeaways. Follow on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let's keep the conversation going with us on social media at Café con Pan Podcast, because your voice always matters there. We love being on Instagram and Facebook. Gracias for listening to Café con Pan, a Spread Ideas Move People production. For more episodes, guest info, or resources, visit cafeconpam.com. And if you're healing from calladita culture and don't know where to start, you can take the quiz. cafeconpam.com/quiz for Tia Wisdom and cariño just for you.
Sabrosura pa' ti que